Hello, everyone. I'm Gemma Starr, and welcome to another episode of Heart Warriors. Heart Warriors is a series I've been guided and inspired to do thanks to my energetic connection with Kata Judah. Kata Judah is the sacred masculine site in Central Australia, very close to Uluru, our sacred feminine site. So, what I'm here to do is to give a platform to men to hear all about their journey into the heart, their highs, their lows, tools, practices, insights, or wisdom. What was unique on their path that they can now share with the other men walking this journey, and of course, us women who are walking right there beside them. Today's guest is a man called Jason Bart, and Jason is a fellow Aussie from Perth in Australia. Now, Jason has named his episode A Man's Fire, and he works with men. He's a transformational coach. He's passionate about bringing men back to their power, helping them to recognize the power that resides within, guiding them to their inner truth and how to share this with grace. So, really excited to be chatting with Jason and hearing all about his journey into the heart. Enjoy. Hello, Jason Bart in Perth. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Gemma. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. I'm excited to hear your story. So let's start with you, but a question a little out of the ordinary, because I like to ask, who are you inside? Who's the man once you drop all your labels of transformational coach or whatever else, you see yourself or people identify you as? Who's the man inside without that?
Well, I guess essentially it's love when you break it all down and we go inward and inward and inward and inward, then inside all of that, the thread that holds it all together is love. That is something that I deeply believe, that love can be quite easily substituted for God or source or however you want, that vibration is love. So ultimately, I guess when we go right down inside, that would be my answer. And then there's layers that go from there into the physical that is now speaking to you.
Yeah, love that. Love that answer. All right, so let's go back to little Jason. What would
Mhm.
you say his major challenge was growing up?
Um, Being confident. I was very shy. I was very much a people pleaser when I was a kid. I Yeah, that was probably my biggest challenge because I was really struggling with who I was and how I was because it didn't really fit into my environment. And this is just aspects and looking at those parts that were struggling because a lot of it was joy, right? There was a lot of joy, a lot of pleasure, a lot of play that was involved. But if I'm looking into what is it that he kind of needed, it was knowing that he was worthy. Is really a big piece, and that feeling of being rejected and not accepted as he was.
Yeah, and so how did he deal with that how did you deal with that as a little boy, as that shyness, that not feeling worthy?
Mm. Well, I mean, when I was a kid, the main thing was being a people pleaser, right? And doing whatever I could to make people like me. And obviously, that works on a very surface level because I'm doing things for people so that they kind of like that. But then on another level, there is a depth that isn't there, and there is also a trust that isn't there because my actions can be quite fickle, or at that time, or it could be quite fickle depending on who I was wanting to impress the most in that moment, and I could just switch back and forth from loving one thing to oh, I would never do that. I don't like that. I like this. If that was someone else that I wanted to impress, and it's I guess yeah, that's the truth of it. That's the truth of it. That was one of the biggest things was being a people pleaser and really acting outside of my own authority and integrity to fit in where I could. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that means, you're not living by your own values, right? You're living by the values of the people that you want to please. So you're easily manipulated and controlled that way. At what point did you consciously become aware of people pleasing?
Oh. Like, I think at the deepest level, probably in my late 30s. I think I knew about it before then, but I didn't really change any behavior. And it wasn't until really the separation of my 11-year marriage that I was just like, okay, I have no idea who I am right now, and I I need to stop trying to please others and actually find out what pleases me inside. And saying that, I was very good at following my joy and following my bliss, and my life has been like pretty good. So it's not like I was struggling because I was making other people happy. I was definitely finding people that were doing things that I enjoyed and pleasing them, and then ended up doing those things. But I do recognize that there was like a definite piece of integrity that wasn't there until I made a conscious choice to go into the depths of it and really find out where my fire was and what stoked my fire.
Is it
Yeah.
sort of like, I mean, because, we've all been there to some extent, I'm sure, but, it's a bit like, I know now, you can feel it. It's sort of like, selling your soul. It's just like, it doesn't, as you used integrity, it's not just in alignment with your inner integrity. You feel it straight away, right? Is that what it's
Really do.
like?
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing, you for lack of a or for a way of expressing it, make a deal with the devil so that you get all of the spoils, and it was like that. I got to do lots of things, I got to explore and live a great life, but there was this giving up of myself to be able to do that. And after, yeah, really letting it break down to the point where I felt like I had no fire left within me at all. And from there, it was really a question of, okay, this is either going to lead to a place of just doing this, people pleasing and just wanting to make the outside satisfied for the rest of my life, which felt like would just be sadness and anxiety. There's so much anxiety in being a people pleaser because I just want to make sure that everyone's feeling okay. So I'm constantly measuring everyone else to make sure that they're okay, and more to the point that they're okay with me. And I didn't care if they weren't okay with other people as long as they were okay with me. It was very selfish like that too.
Is it,
Uh,
I'm just, as you're talking, I'm trying to relate it, to myself. Is it to keep the peace as well so that, the world is peaceful if everyone outside of us is happy?
I don't think so. You know, when I was in that stage, it was less about the world being peaceful, I think, and more about being accepted.
Okay.
Um, and who was it? I think it might have been Brene Brown shared something just recently that I really moved me was the opposite of belonging, where we really belong to our tribe and we feel resonant with it, is fitting in, where we're constantly manipulating ourselves or the environment to fit into the environment, as opposed to just feeling like, oh, this is home, this is my family, this is my tribe. Like, I can be me, whatever that looks like, and I know that I'm going to be accepted. And a lot of people would put, and I did in the past, put belonging and fitting in like directly exchangeable, right? But they're actually the polarity of each other.
So good. Okay,
Mm.
Jason, can you please talk to men who are identifying themselves listening to this as a people pleaser? Can you
Mm.
speak to them, and what would you say to those men?
The most important thing that I've learned through this is I am worth saying yes to. And when I learned that creating boundaries wasn't about saying no and being mean to others and really cutting things off, it was really a case of I'm worthy of saying yes to, and what lights me up, what is my fire. And then I'm going through a program at the moment that I've created called the Reactivated Man, and this is very much about that inner flame. And the first thing I would say to people that are a people pleaser is tune into your inner flame. What does it look like? What does it feel like? And can you activate it, put some more fire on there so that your own flame is burning a little bit brighter? And maybe for others as well, the reason for being a people pleaser is they don't feel that what they offer naturally is enough to be worthy of friendship, kinship, lover, beloved, any of those things. And it's hard. When I grew up, the social status is such a huge thing, and I do appreciate that status is one of my love languages, and it is for many people. And how can I maintain a level of status externally while owning my own flame? And initially, the external status was so much more important than my inner flame. And it wasn't until my inner flame almost went out that I'm like, I got to do something about this. I have to act in a way that is going to reactivate and reignite my inner flame, so that I've always wanted to be of service, and this is part of it. I'm here now again, working in an act of service to help men find their own power, to find their own truth. And what I've noticed really clearly is that when I activate my flame, everything else kind of just finds its own balance with that. And I can be of greater service when I'm in my radiant self, when my flame is blazing. Then I'm in joy, I'm in ease, I'm in activity, I'm in motion, and that I can light the fire of others without my fire going out. And when my fire was really dim and just a couple of logs, if I took a log off to help someone else activate their fire, that was almost putting mine out, right? Or at least putting it into, a great place of jeopardy of it could go out. So I need to manage it now. Whereas if I've got this huge blazing fire inside, I can grab logs here and there and share them around. And it really doesn't matter to my fire, because it's just big enough to hold that I can just throw another log on and it'll just catch and go. So yeah, it's a metaphor that I'm using, and I use metaphors a lot because it just helps my brain to understand what's going on in my body. So maybe it's
No, I love
resonating with
that
others.
metaphor, that analogy of the fire,
Mm,
especially, with the masculine. It's very relevant. Yeah, I usually see it as, the cup, and once your inner cup is full, the
mm,
surplus you can give away unconditionally, because,
yeah.
you're not depleting your own, full love cup.
Mm,
Um, Jason, let's get on now to your adulthood. What would you
mm.
say was your rock bottom moment?
It was probably around 2013, something like that. I'd been separated for a couple of years. And yeah, the relationship had deteriorated with the mother of my kids. And I was feeling really, really empty. I had stepped into some understanding of self through tantra and really gone deep into the underworld there to try and uncover who am I. And yeah, I didn't like what I found. I didn't like the man that was walking this path. I didn't like the way that I was treating my children and really being resentful to their mother, and as a result, in some ways, them. I was resentful to most of the world around me at that time because I had a story going on that what my purpose was stripped away from me. And everything that I was working and leaning towards in life was being taken away from me, or had been taken away from me. And yeah, through the tantric work, I was going into like deep practice and really deep insight into the self. And the judgment was still strong. Like that is a cellular thing that creates a bias over many, many years. And this dialogue, for me at least, it wasn't able to just turn off like that. It took some time, but I was being shown myself like I'd never seen it before. And yeah, there was, luckily for me, I don't like much physical pain. So there was no real physical self-harm, but there was huge amounts of psychological self-harm and emotional self-harm. Like I had literal visualizations of different ways that I was just torturing myself, murdering myself, absolutely obliterating anything that was of any kind of substance. And when I would do that, the dialogue that was coming out was just like, and that's the least you deserve. That's where I was. I didn't feel worthy of anyone or anything or even being on the planet. So yeah, they were some dark days. They were very, very dark days. And I had a lot of support, and my biggest support is the ocean. And there's a particular beach that I live near that I would go to multiple times a day or a week, depending on the time of the year. And it's still a huge anchor for me. And I go there as often as I can because it reminds me of the expansiveness that is life. And I really relate myself to just perspectively a grain of sand in the whole cosmology of it all, and the whole belief that I'm so important and that everything means so much, and shifting that to a point of, yes, for me, I'm important. And yes, for me, I am the center of the whole universe. And at the same time, I am one of trillions and trillions of these things that are, whether in human form or other form, that have consciousness, that are playing a role in this thing we get to witness. So there, it's very, very healing. And I notice it when I haven't been there for a while. I can get a little bit cranky, and it's just like, all right, I think I need to go to the beach and just float and just be one with the waves and connect. And like I have a very, very deep connection to the ocean, and I see the way that I connect with the ocean as a metaphor of how I'm connecting to life. And there are these beautiful waves at this beach that I can just body surf. So I don't need a surfboard. I don't need a bodyboard. It's warm enough. I don't need a wetsuit, so I've just got my board shorts on and that's it. And I'm catching these little waves. And sometimes I recognize that I'm like jumping in too early and I just can't catch it, or I'm like just not in the right spot. And I just, like, everything just feels like I'm out of sync. And it can just be a shift of context of what's going on inside of me and that vibration. And then before you know it, I'm like just catching waves and getting washed up onto the beach and just laughing with joy, and just feel like everything is like perfectly in synchronicity for my own exaltation, and I believe that the universe is here for my benefit, for me to exalt my full brilliance and radiance, and for me to be in my magnificence, right? And yeah, it just for me comes back over and over again to my favorite Rumi quote, which is, our task is not to seek for love, but to seek and find all of the things that prevent us from expressing our love and being our love, and finding ways to just witness what those blocks and barriers are, or bypassing all of that and just coming to the place of grace and radiance, and just going, I don't even know what they were. All I know is right now I'm in a much better place than I was 10 minutes ago. And that's okay. That's enough for right now. I don't need to go into the mental dialogue of trying to understand how the universe works, because I never will, you know. Like looking at a light switch and flicking it and going, yeah, I know how electricity works. I flick it on and it goes, lights turn on, and I flick it off and the lights turn off. I understand electricity. That's pretty much my understanding of the universe.
Yeah. Just when we think we understand something, there's a whole nother layer, right?
And that's the beauty of it. It's just, I remember one time I was walking Mount Agung in Bali. I was living there for a while. And, the mountain, even though it looks like it's like this, it's really going like this as it goes up. And you get to this precipice here and it's just like, oh, I'm at the top. And then you get over the top and you're like, oh my God, there's like all of these other ones still to come. And I can't see it. When I'm just at that edge and I'm looking up, all I can see is this next little ridge, and I think it's the end. And then I get there and it's like a whole new story for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's beautiful.
I'm going to go back to a few things that you mentioned, but I'm just interested. The ocean, masculine or feminine energy?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, like there is obviously the feminine fluidity of it, but there is this masculine witnessing without judgment, constant presence, and absolute power that it holds. So yeah, I find both there, and I clearly speak to both when I'm there. And my dad was a scuba diver, and their mascot was Poseidon. And there have been times where I've done a meditation to Poseidon as I come into the ocean, and then nearly always there's a big set of waves that rolls in just as I'm doing this invocation to Poseidon. So it's like I feel that power and that presence there for sure as well. And when I'm just bathing and playing, and it's so fluid and dynamic and ever changing, it also just, it's obviously feminine too. So
Fascinating. Love that perspective. Okay, so I'm interested in what you said about as you were going through this dark time in your life, around the couple of years that you spoke about, and you felt that your purpose had been stripped and taken from you. Was that as a husband and a father, or was there something else? Okay.
yeah.
So, can we expand on this? Because there's a lot of men in your situation. And of course, a lot of women on the other side who need to understand it also from the male perspective. Um, where can we start? At the rock bottom moment, what was it actually that you were feeling about losing what you perceived to be losing your purpose as a father and a husband?
For me, there's that place of being the father, the husband, the provider, the creator of safety, and all of that when, and this isn't true, but it was a perception at the time that all of that was taken away, because I moved out the house, and the mother stayed with my children, or our children, in our house, and I moved out. And so even though, they were still part of my world, it wasn't the same. They weren't stumbling half asleep into the living room, and like, just it's the smallest things that make the biggest difference. And I felt like my reason for being alive was taken from me. My reason for all of the things that I was doing, the reason that people were depending on me had been taken away. The reason that I'd been working all of these hours and doing all of these things was to create a nest for something that was no longer mine. And I got really resentful. I got really resentful when I after a while got to a point where I didn't want anyone or anything to depend on me. And I sabotaged my relationships in a way that people couldn't depend on me. And it's a thing that I've seen more often because it's such, I don't think anyone who hasn't experienced it can understand, but there is an emptiness that I will never meet in my life again compared to stepping away from that family and trying to keep an open heart in that. And from that emptiness, there was a feeling of being taken advantage of, just being a servant to someone else again, and really, you know, still going through all of the things that I needed to do. I needed to work, I needed to provide, I needed to do all of those things to support my family that weren't mine anymore. And I didn't want to. I didn't think it was fair. I felt like my purpose had been taken away and I had no gas for anything else other than how can I get a short-term satisfaction? What can I do? What's the easiest sparkling thing around me to satisfy my emptiness? And that created actions that if that pain wasn't there, I wouldn't have done. And I feel like there's not a lot of compassion for that transition for men. That I have an advantage of having a really good ability to dialogue emotion and to be able to express through metaphors exactly what I'm feeling and create a context of how it makes sense that I'm feeling like that. But most men don't. Most men haven't learned how to express emotionally. They haven't learned how to express their emotion through emotional release techniques and be able to release it. And, you know, there's two sides to that. One of them is if you go there and you feel it more than if you suppress it. But the beautiful thing is if you go there and you feel it, you can transmute it into something else. Whereas if you neglect it and suppress it, it will stay there forever until you don't anymore. And yeah, it's a place where I have a lot of compassion for men. And I think it's one of the hardest things that anyone, whether you're male or female, mother or father, to step away from your family in that single unit is the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life. And I think it's, you know, equally difficult for most people that love their children, love their family, and can't do that union anymore.
Right. Yeah. Beautifully stated. Thank you. I want to expand on this, Jason, because this is so important. As you said, so many men are going through this. So you're 10 years on from that darkest time. Speak to men, please, who are currently going through this, dealing with the resentment, dealing with the emptiness, dealing with the fact that they're not waking up to kids, you know, stumbling up sleepy-eyed through the lounge room. What have you got to say to those men?
Find brothers. The most important thing that you can do in this place is find brothers. And there's a real biological reason for that. And, with the tantric work, I have an archetypal understanding of the masculine and the feminine. And when you walk away from your family, your feminine is screaming with pain. And the only way, in my experience, that she can be held is by the masculine. And the masculine that is inside a man, like I'm 49 in a few weeks' time. For my masculine, the maturity that's been created within my masculine over 49 years is never going to be comparable to the masculine that's been evolved within a beloved because she's been looking at her masculine for the last 5 or 10 years. It's just not possible. That strength, the stability for my inner feminine to surrender into the masculine felt held and safe like nothing else on the planet. And it needs to happen. I needed to feel safe. Like she needed comfort. She needed safety, because right now she was in pain and he was erratic and just doing whatever felt like the best distraction at the time. And it wasn't until that real brotherhood entered into my world that I started to feel safe and in my body again. And the first with all of these things is acknowledgement. Just acknowledge that there is pain, because there is so much pain, and that it's justified. It's fair enough. Whatever anger is there, whatever sadness is there, whatever resentment is coming up, it's fair enough. And this is something that I've learned, is that whatever someone's going through, it's fair enough for them, considering the story that has led them over however many years to that point right now. The way they're responding is fair enough. And if we can support that to allow things to mature, right? It's, for me, it's less about the healthy and the unhealthy. It's more about the immature and the mature. And as my inner masculine and feminine matured, then they were able to hold each other and actually work with each other to support my real growth and really stepping into my power. And there's a continuous dialogue that happens to this day between my masculine and feminine. And I will do, Gestalt style aspecting with my masculine and feminine, and move from cushion to cushion and have a dialogue with them. And the first time they met was ugly. It was really ugly. And she was angry and he was bitter, and like they were just slinging insults at each other. And it wasn't until they were able to vent all of that then they could go, all right, well, outside of all of that, I like this part about you, and I like this part about you. And well, we're actually really good together as a team, aren't we? Now that we've got through all of the dross, we can use it. We can use it to our advantage. As they say, it's the grist for the mill that helps us to grind the flour into bread that we can then break and feed. So it's a beautiful thing. But men, look for men. And this is what's so encouraging for me. The last 3 years or so, I've been focusing more on, I've actually been living with my daughters again. They've moved in with me, one first and then the other one. And this is coming to a closure. My youngest is now 18 and got a partner, and they're going to be traveling around Australia. And I'm leaning back into, okay, what is my fire, and where do I want to be working in the world? And it's really around this men's work. And I'm so excited about the amount of men's work that's happening. There's actually, on the weekend of my 49th birthday, there is a men's festival with like 200 people going in just outside of Perth. And there's men's work popping up everywhere to the point of, is there space for me to be teaching this stuff? But of course, there are millions and millions and millions of men, and we all have our own frequency, and this is another important piece for all men and all people is don't imitate. You can use imitation as a guidance of, if you're learning to play tennis and you see someone play tennis and how they play tennis, and you can start to use it as a role model, but don't try and play their game. Use what they do to assist you in playing your own game, and really learn how do you want to strike the ball in life. And it's trusting that you are magnificent. Like everyone, there is a nugget of gold that is just pure essence of magnificence inside everyone. And how much of that do we allow out? And when we've been receiving abuse, and there's a lot of evidence about the damage that emotional and psychological abuse does, and the long-term effects of that. And it's a very difficult abuse to quantify. And a lot of men have silently been receiving abuse for many, many years. And I'm not in any way saying that men don't abuse women and that is in any way okay, but I'm just speaking to the brothers here that have been receiving abuse for years, that they're not good enough, that they're useless, that they're no good at whatever it is that someone put on a pedestal that they deserve in a man. And as opposed to working together, they just receive abuse. And for men to shift that I am not okay to I'm not bad to I'm actually okay to I am magnificent. Like that's a long journey. It really is, to the point where sometimes when I'm mentioning to people that there is even just a seed of magnificence within them, that it's impossible to comprehend. And it's true. So it's find brothers, men, find brothers, because there are plenty of women's circles and there are more and more men's circles. I hold a fortnightly one online. So, there's a bunch of free stuff. It's not about I'm not located close or I don't have the money for this. Like, lean in. And there are plenty of brothers that are going, look, here's a life jacket. I'll need it back when you're done, but until then, you can have it. Until you learn to swim, and then when you're done, give me the life jacket back because I'm going to give it to someone else. And it's about creating that space of, people need to participate in their own rescue. But I'm here to throw out the life buoys as much as I can, and I'll pull them in if they hold on to it. But if they go, oh, it's a little bit far to reach, I don't want to swim 2 meters. It's just like, then I can't help. I really can't. And I've got to the point where I don't want to. I wanted to save those people more than anything because no one else could get them to swim to the buoy and no one else could get them to activate in their rescue. And I can. Jason will be able to activate them into their own rescue. And now it's much more like it's all in divine timing. And I don't need that artificial gratification of trying to support people that aren't wanting support.
Yeah, I think when people get I've got to plug my computer in, sorry.
That's okay.
Battery saver just went on. I think, until people are in enough pain, they'll keep going. And, it's when the pain finally gets so much that they'll take themselves there. You're the first, let's say, coach that I can remember that we've interviewed in this series, and we're up to number 90, heaps on the Gold Coast. And, I'm like 90 minutes north of Brisbane, but I probably interviewed, gosh, probably close to 10 on the Gold Coast. But you're the first coach that I've interviewed from on the other side of the country. I'd like to get more into men being abused by women because, of course, the conversation is 99% in the other direction. And I'm not saying that's not valid because it is, okay? But this is your story is the one that's heard less.
Yeah.
So, what do you want to say around men being abused by women? And I'll just open the conversation right up. What you feel is important to be told.
So, first of all, what I truly believe is the world is in polarity, and that the unhealthy masculine and unhealthy or immature masculine and feminine are always in equal balance. And that if there is abuse going in one direction, there is often an equal amount of abuse in a completely different form going in another direction. And there is thin ice that I'm walking on right now, and I'm just feeling that and wanting to be deeply honoring to everyone, because this is really sensitive territory. And yeah, one that I haven't personally had the deepest experience with, because I know people have gone a lot deeper in receiving abuse than I have. And that makes me feel good that the amount of abuse that I was giving was less as well. So that that feels good. But yeah, they're for everyone, there is a feeling that is present inside of I'm being loving or I am not being loving in this moment. And that can be in thought, word, deed, and action. And because one is more visible than another in a third dimension doesn't mean that it's in any way worse than any of the other forms of abuse. And my invitation to the women is, if you feel that you are in an abusive relationship, to lean into, how can I speak with more love and compassion? I know that feeling, and like, this is just so hard to speak to without it being taken out of context. I know that place of feeling the immature feminine just nagging and nagging and nagging to the point of I can't even hear my own thoughts anymore. I can't feel my own emotions anymore because I'm being bombarded by that. And this is where the physical release is required from the masculine. Now, what is required on top of that is that it's not directed at anyone. And this is where emotional release techniques come in so powerfully, is when my rage just builds to the point of I need to smash something, and I don't want it to be you, but if you don't stop and you don't get out of the way, you're not giving me an option here. I need to smash something because my rage is explosive right now. And if the man has been trained to a point to be able to take that to a padded room and a baseball bat, or even just cushions, and there is this thing around emotional release techniques that they don't really suffice in releasing the emotion. And that's only the case if it's not done correctly, because there's a way to do everything. We can do emotional release techniques on the surface, and they get to the chest and they get to the throat, and they help to clear the mind, but they don't get to the primal aspect of the man that is just like, there is a part in every man that goes primally back in our ancestry to the point of, this is not okay, bang, I'm going to hit you on the head with a club. Now, that's better. And we all have that as our primal, and we've layered our consciousness on top of that. But if our consciousness is just shattered by the moment, then that's what it's going to come down to. And if we can explosively release from that place in a safe environment that isn't projected at anyone, then we have an ability to release that tension. And one of the books that I read that really supported me in how to relate moving forward was a book by Dr. David Schnarch, and it's called Passionate Marriage. And one of the things that he talks about, there's four main pillars of differentiation, and one of them is, don't overreact to your partner's overreaction. And the ability to witness the moment, that spark of, here we go again, right? And we've heard it, we've felt it, of here we go. And then all of a sudden we're in this trance of playing out that game together that just ends in tears for everyone, as opposed to going, oh, there we are. Okay, I'm going to step away and I'm going to move this aside and I'm going to do what I need to do to get rid of this agitation, which is palpable inside my body right now. Like, everyone can feel like there is static in the air. To be able to release that to the point where you can come back, still be emotionally hurt, sad, excited, scared, whatever that is, but not respond with charge that needs to defend that, but can just speak from a place of truth. That it really hurts when you do that. It really hurts me. I feel scared, and this is, Chantel Rabin is a deep old friend of mine, and one of the things she talks about is in conflict resolution is, I feel I need what that will give me. And if we can come back to the point of not needing to tell a whole story, but I'm feeling scared right now. I'm feeling scared, and what I need is, I need to know that you are here, that you're not going to run off in 2 minutes, or you're not going to verbally attack me, or you're not going to blame me for everything. And what that will give me is this feeling that we are doing this together. We are wanting to build a connection and like grow this family or this moment together. And that can be anything from, I'm scared. Which is fear. I have fear. I'm happy. I'm sad. I'm frustrated. And keeping it as succinct as possible without going into story. Because if I tell you that I have fear, there's nothing you can say about that. But if I tell you that, well, being on camera and now this is going to be published and I'm sure you're going to be fine, but, I've got some fear inside of me, then you can respond with, well, look, I'm going to be here and it's going to be okay and you don't have anything to fear, and all of the story around why we would have fear. But we need to validate it first. Acknowledgement,
Yeah. I just so in awe of and appreciate your openness talking about this, because it is a massive subject. And I just wanted to clarify one thing, if I may, Jason. So was it a situation where you were abusive to your ex-wife, or was she abusive to you, like
We were verbally and emotionally abusive to
Okay.
one another at times.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
The
Mm,
reason, as I said, is just bring it out in the open because, and I can relate to this because I was also in a marriage like that. And when you say, I'm probably going to get emotional now too. That it just takes basically her to shut up so that he can have some space and walk away. You said something along those lines. I acknowledge that I didn't do that when I was in that situation. You're so wrapped up in the moment and you just keep going verbally until that's the only way to
yeah,
basically shut her up.
yeah. And the masculine's walking out the door and she's chasing after him, just like verbally throwing stones at him as he goes.
It's a
You
real
know,
power play, isn't it?
it's huge power play. And what really angers me is moments like that where there has been a lot of abuse in that direction, and the man turns around and just goes, "Get off." And then that is the moment that is taken as abuse, that one piece of physical action, whereas all of the rest doesn't even get considered. And that there are this is a global thing. There was a movie, I don't know if you've seen it, and it's worth checking out. It's a bit of a doco movie called The Red Pill. And they talk about men and sexual abuse and emotional abuse. And the truth is, hurt people hurt people, right? And most male sex offenders have been sexually abused themselves. And it is what they know, whether it's good or bad, it is an element within their comfort zone. And all they want is to feel ease. And so it's about being able to hold space for that, for their inner child, for their immature, wounded feminine to be able to go, it's okay. It's fair enough. You're safe here right now. Let me just hold you. And the healing that happens within a man when he is just, you know, sitting, leaning against a man and just being held and just whispered into the ear of, you're amazing. I love you. I've got you. I don't need anything from you. Tears just start streaming. And that is the release of these inner beliefs and inner expectations of, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I can't do this right. And in that moment, none of it matters. There's nothing to get right. And ultimately, that's the truth for our whole lives. There's nothing to do other than just be ourselves. There's no way to be other than being ourselves. And if we're authentically in that, then we will do no harm. It will be of service and it will be in connection to God and spirit, because that is our natural essence. Like, as I was talking about, everything comes back to love. Between all of the atoms and that subatomic particles is love that binds it all together. So if we allow the shields to come off and all the armor to come off and all these layers, what's left is love. But sometimes, those layers are very tightly bound and security code locked and someone's thrown the key away and who knows what's going on. Impossible to find, but we can get there. We can get there. And then, we are coming to a huge precipice in our world right now I believe we're entering a whole new renaissance in the very, very near future. And when power becomes almost free, all of a sudden everything becomes cheaper. Your bills almost become non-existent, right? So then all of a sudden it's like, what do I need to work for? And with the technology that we have, a lot of the work won't even be available anymore because someone else or something else can do it faster and more correctly. Now, when it takes a human touch, as artistry and things like that, then all of a sudden this is my essence coming through, right? And this is how the mundane is going to become the exquisite. And it's many layered, many layered. And it's a pretty tough rap for most guys out there at the moment. And the whole industrial era has done this, where we've moved from working in our community, having a profession, whether you're a blacksmith or, even if you're an electrician and coming into these kinds of ages, you did stuff and you could see the results of the stuff you did. Whereas right now, there is so much sitting in an office doing things we hate for a result that we can't even witness. And if we could witness it, we probably wouldn't want to know. Okay. And so it's almost like dad goes off to sell his soul to save the family. And then when he gets home, first of all, he's got no juice because he's been doing something that he doesn't excite him all day long, right? And then he gets back and then it's like, oh, what have you been doing today, Dad? Well, there's nothing really to tell. And all of a sudden the dad loses status because dad's, I don't know, what does dad do, right? And so it just goes in so many different layers of the power of the man being diminished. And we're re-emerging now. Our men are being reactivated and we're going, actually, I'm going to choose me, and that looks like this. Well, how are you going to feed your family? Maybe we'll grow food, right? Or we'll join a community where other people are doing things and we can work together. And this is now getting to the point with technology. And there's always this phase of, first fax machines were terrible. Remember the old dots and you could hardly read it and things like that. And you could hear it printing out for hours because there was something coming through. And now we're talking to each other on camera. And technology is getting to the point where we don't have to do all of the dumb stuff anymore. We can actually live from passion and have the fruits. And that's where we're going. That's where we are. We just need to get used to it.
This is a great conversation, Jason. So where do you see this explosion in the men's movement, this empowerment, this fire that's happening? And I mean, to anyone who is, it's obvious to anyone that has got an eye to see it, the explosion of the men stepping into their power and on their healing journey into the heart. What's happening there, let's say on the ground, from your point of view, and where's it heading?
So there's different layers, obviously, right? And the first thing is there are just more and more men wanting to step into circle and go, there's more to life than this, and I want to find out what it is. There's more to me than this, and I want to find out what it is. So that's just on a ground level. And it's one of those things of like a rising tide lifts all ships, right? And it's a frequency thing. So all men, whether they want to admit it or not, their boat is rising with the tides. And some men will bolt their boat to the ground, and as the tide rises, look, mine's not rising. It's like, yeah, you're working really hard at that, aren't you? And that's going to be there, right? And if they hold it long enough, the ocean will overtake their boat, and so be it. That's a choice. But for most men, they're really going like, I can feel it. I can feel not only the awakening happening within me, but I can feel the support in my brothers and my sisters to do this now. And as a result, there are more and more men that have gone through the steps. And then, that typical hero's journey of, you go into the underworld and you bring up all of your shit, and then you find the diamond at the bottom and you take that diamond and you take it back into the village and you show what can be found, the rainbows that glisten from your diamond, you can share that. And then all of a sudden other men get inspired and they become the wise man that was just like, did you know there was more than this? Which is the catalyst for the journey, right? The hero's journey starts with the mundane. We're just doing the same old, knowing that there is more than this. And then it takes a catalyst, and it can be an event or it can be a person that can just go, have you thought about? And you're like, wow, that's just opened up a whole new world. And there are more and more men that are stepping into that. And every man has his own flavor. Every man has his own resonance in how he did it himself and how he can share it with others. So there is a lot of choice, for men out there. And that's the thing, with the festival that's coming up. There's going to be a whole bunch of facilitators there. So people can, it's like a smorgasbord. Go there and it's like, who's got the men's empowerment that I'm looking for? And it's happening globally. There are workshops all around, and there are things that are solid and safe. And I remember doing this when I was doing the tantric work, and it's very vertical, right? You go into the depths of hell and you go into the absolute ecstatics of the light. And then I did something called the Mankind Project, or MKP, because I was doing more men's work, and I'm like, I don't know if it's for me, but I just want to see what's out there in the field. And I remember like being here and everything just went boom, boom. And I was like, wow, that didn't shift much, but the whole foundation shifted. Everything moved just one step up. And it felt very safe, very attainable and maintainable, right? To hold that. Whereas these tantric highs and lows are very difficult to maintain, and you can't, because there's always that spiral that goes between. But yeah, so with that, what I'm saying is that there's lots of different work for different people to have that cathartic breakthrough, or to just go, I'm just going to dip my toe in the water and walk along the beach for a while. I'm not jumping in, but it's nice to be here.
Yeah. And I mean, in a nutshell, I guess that's what this series is about too, interviewing 100 different men, 100 different journeys, 100 different experiences, and, 100 different brands of wisdom come out of that at the end. I'd like to get into this tantra experience that you used to heal yourself starting back in 2013, and you said it took you to your depths, and now you're saying it took you up to your bliss. Can you give us an insight into that work and what it involves?
Yeah, and it's been foundational for me, and I again can directly replace in the way that I understand it. And so I haven't done scriptural tantra. For me, it's more the neo tantra, which is an embodied version of experiences using that knowledge, but not really going to the doctrine and scripture as much. And tantra can be replaced with presence. And so if you are being present in all of the things that you're doing, in a very general sense, you are doing tantra. And so it's all things. It's how do you breathe? How do you sleep? How do you eat? And of course, how do you make love? And for me, there was a bit of shame around sexuality when I was growing up, and like in the marriage a little bit as well. And so I had no idea what my boundaries were, like at all. And I felt like I needed a container that would force me to look into my own boundaries. And it did that. Like I remember one of the first workshops that I went to, there was a friend who'd flown in from Sedona, or now a friend, and he was teaching this workshop, and there was this cute girl that was traveling with him, and we were talking about boundaries. And I thought, oh, look, I'm not in a marriage anymore, and she's cute, and who knows? I'm going to let this go where it wants to go. And I just said, look, I don't really have any boundaries. And the facilitator went, great. Well, I've got a 12-inch black dildo out the back. I'm going to grab that and bring it out. And I was like, I actually do have boundaries. You know what? I do. I actually really do have boundaries. And thank you for pointing it out. And so that's from the ridiculous to the subtle. It gave me permission. More than anything, it gave me permission. It gave me permission to feel whatever I was feeling, whether that was angry, whether that was sad, whether that was happy and ecstatic or erotic. What was valued was expression of emotion. That's what was valued in those containers. And it was held in a way that it was guided into exploring where the understanding is and also where the boundaries are within that. And it was really powerful, really, really powerful. And I highly recommend anyone who is thinking of activating the inner flame and really stepping into their power to have a look at that kind of work, because one of the things that it has that almost all other things don't have is the acceptance of all things. And within a container of consent, if both of you agree to do something, it's okay. And that was very unusual for me. And it gave me a lot of permission to find out, first of all, how much I wasn't expressing, and then how to express it. And then deeper than that, really how to feel it within me and then express it in a more subtle, loving, graceful way. And it's very much like that pendulum of I'm the yes man. I'm going to say yes to everything. Happy wife, happy life, whatever you want, dear or friend or anyone I'm trying to make happy. I'm not going to say yes to anyone or anything, or I'm just going to take and do what I want, and it's all about me. And there was definitely this journey through the ego of feeling completely deflated, where my flame did nothing, to being ignited and being able to activate a woman on the other side of the room. There was an ego journey that came with that. I was the tantra guy, or one of them, right? And there were ways of connecting that I didn't even know existed. And getting to understand the subtleties of energy and the energetic inner masculine and energetic inner feminine within me had huge consequences in how I live my life. I mean, I remember that thing of embody your feminine, right? And yoni is the Sanskrit word for vagina. And so walk down to the beach and feel your yoni. So I'm walking down the beach and just imagining the very subtle movements of my labia as I'm kind of walking to the beach. And things like that create a subtle understanding of not only who I am, but also the women that I love in my world, how they are. And it gave me a deep understanding when I went into the masculine and feminine dialogue, to hear her talk to him and hear him talk to her, to see how I was looking at the world, because that's what happens, right? When I'm in that, and there are contrasexual events at these things, so I'm in a dress and I got lipstick on and I got a wig on, and I'm embodying my inner feminine. Her name is Jade, and the immaturity that was there in the beginning is ridiculous. but she matures, as does my darkness. My darkness is equally in polarity to my lightness for everyone. The amount of time that I dwell there is much less than in my light, but the extent of its polarity is the same, in my belief. And my ability to mature my darkness to a point where it wasn't repressed or judged, but seen as an element of the power that resides within me and Gaia and the whole cosmos, allowed me to use that power through my heart into the light and use it as a tool, a platform to stand on that had a deep root because I allowed it to be true. As opposed to, I'm going to stay in love and light, and it's all in love and light, and it's just like, they are the scariest people on the planet, I tell you.
Yeah.
You never know when darkness is going to jump out at you. And just on that, quickly, you see this when you go to, for example, I was into really heavy techno, or the death metal where they're just like screaming and all of that. And there is so much kind of aggression and darkness. If you talk to those people, they are ridiculously gentle and sensitive and loving because they own their darkness. They embody it. That they don't need to express from there to prove anything. They use it as an element that's within them of knowing, so that everything else can be in more ease.
Interesting.
Mm.
I love this conversation around masculine and feminine energies, and especially, understanding it from a man's point of view. So I often ask the question, in your opinion, and of course there's no right or wrong answer, is a healthy man 50-50? Is he 80-90% masculine, 20-30% feminine? Is he fluid? What's your perspective of a healthy man balancing and harmonizing feminine, masculine energies within?
Look, I don't think that there is a defined amount. But I think it's, somewhere between 70 and 80 for me. That's a pretty good balance. And I acknowledge that I'm probably more feminine in essence than many guys. So it can be 90. It can be 99 if that's your truth, and that you are just deeply feminine or masculine and you're in that. But as long as there is maturity and that 1% isn't disregarded and it's fully owned and accepted as being the divine goddess within, then that's okay. And you've probably heard this before of the 3 stages of relationship that David Data talks about. And so you've got your codependence, right, where you've got your male and your female, and the male goes to work and earns the money, and the female stays at home and looks after the family, and never the two shall cross, right? They complete each other, right? Then you get the independent relationship where I am masculine and feminine and I can do everything, and you're masculine and feminine and can do everything. And we get this beautiful independence of the 2 circles that also don't really meet, right? And that's how you become really good business partners, managing the family. But there's not a lot of energy. There's not a lot of passion. There's not a lot of polarity between you because you're both everything, right? And then that 3rd stage of interdependence, where I am masculine and feminine and I can do everything. I can take care of everything. But my natural bias is to be in the masculine and to hold that place of creating safety, witnessing without judgment, being the provider. That is where I feel in my ease the most. And I want to then match with a partner who is then primarily in their feminine so that our polarities can meet. But I'm not dependent on it. And one of the visuals that I had is kind of like these 2 columns that stand strong next to each other with these vines just entwining them and mixing them together so that there is this beautiful union, but they're all standing on their own footing.
Yeah, I love this. And of course, you've got, the Vesica Pisces analogy. You use the two independents. So then you've got the independent, or the masculine for masculine, and then you've got that overlap. And of course, the relationship. And of course, that's the basis for the flower of life in sacred geometry. So yeah, I love this conversation. Jason, we've got about 15 minutes left. I like to open it up as to what else would you like to bring to this conversation that I haven't asked you about that you feel is important and relevant around men, masculinity, the healing journey?
I think primarily because of the time that we're in right now. And we are going through a huge change in our reality and what our reality is going to look like. And I strongly believe that in 2 to 5 years' time, it will be almost unrecognizable how we live. And when we have an identity related to our actions, our job, our relationships, and things like that, that there can be an attachment to needing to continue to do that to be of value. And that if I don't do that, then what is my value? And I think that this will be the greatest existential crisis in humanity in the next few years. And I think that's also one of the reasons why there is all of this men's support coming through, because there's going to be a wave of men not knowing what to do. And they're going to need a ring of support. And I guess the piece that I would say is that we don't know. There's that beautiful story of the Asian farmer who one of his horses escapes, right? And the neighbor comes over and he goes, "Oh, really sorry to hear about your horse running away. That's so sad to hear." And he's like, "Oh, is that so? I can't say good or bad. I don't know what's happened. I can't define it in that way." And then the horse comes back the next day with a flock of other wild brumbies. And it's come back. And then all of a sudden it's like, "Oh my God, look at you and your great fortune. Your horse has brought back all of these horses." And then it's like, good or bad, I can't say. I don't know what the outcome of this will be. All I can do is be present in the moment. And then the son is trying to, calm one of these wild brumbies. I can't remember the exact word that you use for it. And then he falls off and breaks his leg. And it's like, oh, such bad luck. Like, your son's broken his leg and that's really unfortunate for you. And the old man's like, good or bad, I can't say. I don't know what's going to happen, And then, of course, within a week, the army's knocking on the door because they've gone to war and they're looking for all of the able young men, and he's got a broken leg, so he doesn't get recruited. And so we don't know what's good or bad. We don't know if AI is good or bad. We don't know if the system collapsing is good or bad. We don't know if what is arriving within us is good or bad. And this is what the work with Tantra really has helped me with, is to not have an attachment to whether something was good or bad, but really being aware of what's present. And what does that feel like? Does it feel like something that's expansive, or does it feel like something that's constrictive? And be aware of that, We don't know. What we do know is that we have the ability to either overreact to our outside environment, which feels like it's overreacting to us, or we can hold that and go, wow, that's really brought up some old stuff for me. And I have tools, or I'm going to find someone who can share tools to help me manage it, right? If your boat is leaking, that doesn't mean you're going to sink if you know how to patch the hole. But if you just sit there and go, oh my God, it's leaking, and if I pick on this hole, look, the hole gets bigger and now more water comes in, and well, I think we're going to drown really fast now, that doesn't support you.
Yeah, so
But
good.
to go, there's a hole here, and there's holes over there. I think it's time I'm going to have a look at how I plug holes in my boat. Right? And that's the same thing, whether it's rage or frustration or lethargy that's just overtaking you, that you feel hopeless and helpless. Recognize that that's actually, it is what you're feeling. And don't try and deny it. You know, the number one thing in AA is acknowledging the truth, validating what is real. And then from there, it's like, this is my GPS point right here, and I want to go to there, and I can get instructions. But if I don't tell the GPS exactly where I am, and because I want to be over here and not over here where I am, then the GPS instructions will be wrong. And we actually won't be able to follow our truth because we're not acknowledging our reality.
Yeah, so good. Thank you, Jason. So there's two things left. One, I'd like to let people, if you could let people know where they can find you, what have you got going at the moment? You spoke about a men's group that you run. Give us the rundown, and of course we'll put all your links in the description below.
Yeah, cool. So the easiest is jasonbart.xyz. So there's no .coms or AUs or anything. It's just .xyz. What's something that's most out of the system that I can find? And it was XYZ. So jasonbart.xyz is my social, and also on Instagram, and also my website. So you can just go to jasonbart.xyz. And from there, you'll see a fortnightly men's circle that will be happening next Monday night, Perth time, between 6 and 8. I have a program that I'm running right now that's about to start next week called The Reactivated Man, which is a 6-week container about really stepping into and activating this inner flame. And how do I do that? How do I care for myself? How do I expand my potential, right? So that's happening mid-June. There's a 2.5-day men's retreat called Elements of Man down in Denmark in Western Australia. Gorgeous, magical place. So that's happening. And then I also do a thing called tantric speed dating, where I get people to, as much as possible, get rid of the masks. So I give everyone either a number or a letter, and everyone gets a little black book. And as opposed to asking them all the questions to see if they tick all of the boxes, I get people to tune into their head center, their heart center, and their sex center and feel what is alive with this person. Is there attraction or repulsion, or is there just nothing? And getting them to understand that if their sensation is the same for every single person they meet, and they've met 12 people that night, that their mask is ridiculously strong and nothing can penetrate it, because they are exactly the same no matter what their surroundings are. And then through that, working with boundaries, empowering the no, and also getting people to ask for what they want. Right? It's really nice to receive a massage, but to actually tell someone how you want to receive a massage, some people don't do that. They don't ask for anything. If it's like, did you want a massage? It's just like, yeah, what do you massage you want? Oh, whatever you want to do, that's fine. And then they actually can sit there going, oh, this is really hurting, but I don't want to say anything because it's been so sweet giving me a massage, but it's really uncomfortable. I actually don't like this at all, but I'm not going to say anything. It's just like the permission to say, could you do that a little softer? Could you make the strokes a little bit longer? Isn't offensive to anyone. The person giving the massage wants to give it in a way you want it, but we don't ask. And that's part of what that is. It's almost like a gym workshop for how to honor and speak your boundaries in a loving, compassionate way, so that when you're out in the world, you've practiced saying no. You've practiced saying, I'm a little uncomfortable with that, but what I am comfortable with is this. right? And it's not black or white, but where in the spectrum can we meet? It's gorgeous. I love it.
I want to ask a question about the tantric speed dating, because I've always, well, not always, recently, I've always thought the perfect first date for me would just be no words. Just sit with the person, you could hold hands if it feels comfortable, look into their eyes, feel, can they sit there in your presence, and I can, you can pick up so much more on the energy of someone when you're not distracted with the words and everything. So is that
Yeah.
what that is, like no words?
As much as possible. And these humans, they love to talk, and they love to express in words, but the invitation is to not talk, and to really, in that place of silence, in awareness of the self, to step in front of the next person and then go, and how is my body responding now?
Mm.
And then step into the next person. How is my body responding now? And the more awareness that you have of that, the easier, again, it is to spot it outside of the workshop. When you meet someone, you can go, oh, yeah, that's my sex center. That's definitely been activated by this person. Or, oh my God, my heart's just like, I'm really strong with you. I love this, or I feel like we've come here for the same purpose, from the same planet, and we're tribe, we're bird tribe, star tribe, whatever you want to call it. We're family on that center. And when you're looking for a beloved, ideally you want all three centers lit up.
Mm. So that's in like real life, not online, right?
Yep, yep. The Fremantle Yoga Center. We do it on the 20th of May. So next week, 10 days from now.
Yeah, so
Mm.
cool. That's great. I really love that. Yeah. Okay, Jason, final message to men that, maybe where you were 10 years ago, going through their own deepest, darkest rock bottom moment, struggling with, fear of the future, what they're in the moment. What have you got to say to those men?
So if I can swear for a word, it's fucking fair enough. Whatever it is right now, it's fucking fair enough. And that is the first step of knowing that whatever is here because of all of the things that have happened preceding this point. And that there are men that are wanting to support you and able to support you to shift from this. And don't look for your partner to be your anchor in this, to be your, support network, because that creates a burden. If you can take your safety counsel outside of your intimate relationship, then you can come back to the relationship with strength, and in a place of still being vulnerable, but not needing them to be their support network. Then they can show up in love for you, in an understanding for you, without feeling like they have the burden of carrying you.
Mm.
And so, yeah, if you're anywhere in the world, reach out. I have got networks all over the world. If you can't find something, I can help you find something. And it goes everything from, I need someone to talk to right now because I don't know if I can make it through the night, to I'm on this journey and I want to go as deep as I can because I want to uncover more. And there's all of that is available. So, yeah, deep honor and respect to you, brothers.
Amazing. What I've loved this conversation. Thank you so much, Jason. It's been
Okay.
great. It's new stuff has come out that we haven't covered, and just, of course, your unique experience. And I just really admire your openness to be able to come forth with your story, because, no doubt that is what helps other men to get in touch with their own emotions and feelings around their pain as well. So thank you from my heart to yours.
Gemma, thank you for the invitation. It's been great.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Everyone, if you could like, share, subscribe, and I'll be back in another couple of days with another episode of Heart Warriors. So bye. Stay on if you like.